before we get into today's episode, I want to share something that's genuinely made a difference in how I run my business, McRae's Window Cleaning. Like for years anyway, I used a paper diary and not much else, and try to remember things in my head to organise my clients. And it worked for a while until it didn't work. And at times I dropped the ball. But then 5 years ago, I found Squeegee app, and it has been a lifesaver. It handles my scheduling, my client relationship management. It's even got features to quote and invoice. So it really simplifies the admin. So if you're ready to work smarter, grab Squeegee app using my discount code that you'll find in the show description and benefit from the same app that I do. It's what I use every day in McRae's Window Cleaning. Well, welcome to our latest episode from the Window Pro podcast, and today I've got the privilege of talking to Steve Davies, who is in Perth. Steve, how long have you been window cleaning for?
About 6 years now.
Have you always worked for yourself?
No, I actually started working for a friend's another company for 2 years, learning that and house washing and pressure washing. So that's how I started with window cleaning.
Yes, and then you went out on your own.
Yep.
Did you enjoy being in business, or did you enjoy working for somebody?
Bit of both, to be honest. In hindsight, I can see advantages to having worked for someone. It was really nice to be able to just rock up, do the work, just focus on the work and not have to worry about anything else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, running a business, the flexibility you get with that, even more interaction with the customers, with quoting and things like that. Yeah, I honestly can't. I'd say I probably preferred working for myself ultimately, but I can't say there weren't advantages to working for someone.
Yeah, sure. So, what was anything particular that you really enjoyed in that 6 years in the industry?
Uh, I'd say the time spent with customers was by far my favorite thing. I specialized in residential purely because of the time you get to spend with people. You're there for a few hours, you get to know them, and even from quoting, I preferred to go and quote in person.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity to get to know the person, them to get to know me.
Yeah.
And rarely did I ever not get the job following an in-person quote. And I've often put that down to that interaction with the customer. I love people. So that was probably the thing I love the most.
Okay, so that being the case, then, what would you say is the key to developing and maintaining those business relationships with residential clients?
Not treating them as a customer, but treating them as a person, as someone you're trying. You're not just trying to provide them a service. You're trying to provide them an experience that brings them happiness, that fulfills something in them. And so, because anyone can provide a service, but
Yeah.
be almost becoming a friend is something I've always looked at. Obviously you still got to keep it professional, of course, but uh, making them feel that you are actually interested in them and actually making that sincere, being interested in them, that's key to that. And that's even now, I still occasionally hear from clients from when I first worked in Brisbane. Even now, I still occasionally hear from clients just seeing how I am, and I haven't provided them a service for 2.5 years, and yet there's still that connection because of that relationship.
Yes, yes. It's an important factor if you're going to maintain longevity in the industry, is to be able to be nice to people, listen to them, and you've obviously made that a success in dealing with customers. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. How do you see the industry in Australia? So I asked that question because you're compared to me, you're fairly new in the industry. How do you see the industry developing? Like, what are some of your observations of, trends, different styles, what window cleaners are doing? How would you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I've actually in that time I've got to work with a lot of different window cleaners who all use different equipment. Some of them have different techniques. A lot of them work in different aspects of the industry. Some in high rise, some in residential, commercial, industrial, everything. Um, I I would say it's interesting how technology is adjusting things. I've noticed, for example, I've had recently had the opportunity to work with some who have been in the industry for decades and who still just use traditional tools, squeegee and applicator. And now, and I actually introduced them to
Yeah,
water-fed equipment, and we did a job at it's like a nursing home, a 2 to 3 story. They had always done it by ladders. They'd never done it with water fed. And we did it with water fed. I was there specifically to do the 2 story aspect because they were getting on a bit, struggling with the ladder work. And the difference in time that it saved and seeing how simple it was to use, they were just blown away. And so that aspect of using technology, and even in that technology, there are differences, the different sort of poles you can get, the brushes, keeping up with that and how that revolutionizes how things are done is really quite interesting. And particularly as you said, yourself have done it for a very long time. You've seen that a lot more than I have. It's quite extraordinary.
yes. Do you have a favorite product?
Uh, my favorite product is probably the Wagtail Orbital Squeegee. So I love it. I've used a lot of different squeegees. I learnt on Mowerman. I've used Unger. There's something about the Orbital, particularly for pull down method. I love it.
Yeah.
Love that particular thing. But at the end of the day, though, that there's so many aspects of the tools that make the job easier. There's a brush I use for screens, for example, that I have found has been an amazing thing, and most window cleaners I know don't use it. But I have found it's been almost a vital part of being able to clean certain screens that can't always be done using running water or other methods. So
Is that like a kinetic brush?
it looks more like a cobweb brush, but it's long like an applicator, longer bristles, and they're not firm bristles. They're quite soft, so they won't damage a screen.
Yeah.
But they just using that brush. It was introduced to me by another window cleaner in Brisbane who he had it, and it was amazing. And certain jobs you just can't use running water, or they're just different things. Some jobs, I'm not a believer in one way is the only way. You need to be able to use different methods, different tools to provide the best service,
Yeah.
and that tool has been essential.
Yes. Yes. That's very wise advice because that's exactly the case. People who are stuck on one particular tool, they will either slow themselves down, get frustrated with the lack of results. But if they just branch out, broaden their horizons, like your experience with waterfed with that older person, which brings me to something that we need to talk about. You're no longer in the industry. Well, barely. You've walked away from it recently. Can you tell the listeners why?
Yeah, walking away is a bit of a pun, I think, in that, because I certainly wasn't walking. I had an injury, a momentary lapse in judgment because I got complacent from a safety aspect. I had a ladder slide out from under me, and I had quite a serious injury in my foot and knee that I'm still recovering 6 months later. I'm still using a walking stick, and I'm not even sure how long it's going to be before I can walk normally again. So yeah, that's unfortunately resulted in me not being able to continue window cleaning at the very least for the time being, and potentially not returning at all.
Yeah. So is that the first time you've had a ladder accident?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you learn from it?
Uh, it's funny everything in hindsight. I always thought I've always been safety conscious. Not that you'd think that from the accident, but I always have been safety conscious. Very careful. The guy who taught me was incredibly focused on safety. And to this day, I still used things and methods that he put in place for that. But over time, you you forget you take it for granted. You know that if you just make sure the angle is right, you're fine. There are reasons why we are taught from a safety method to tie things off or have it footed. Even working on yourself, working by yourself, there are tools that allow you to do that. And I just, over time, got complacent, and it happened.
Yeah. Do you think that possibly we get complacent because we're trying to make good money and we know that working quick means less time at the job, more jobs fit into the day, more money in the pocket? Do you think that sometimes subconsciously that affects our focus on safety?
I think it can, yes. It wasn't the case for me in that situation, but I definitely think for some, and I have seen it, where particularly when there's a time factor involved, yeah, I think anyone who thinks that that can't be a reason it probably is, it's probably a problem for them. So
Mm.
that is definitely one aspect.
So Steve, like if someone is starting out and they're looking at buying a ladder because they think that they need a ladder to get up to a higher window, what advice would you give them?
So for one, well, they definitely need a ladder. You need to have that in your toolkit because as great as water-fed poles are, you can't use a water-fed pole inside. So there are times and you need to get on roof times. The one thing I would tell them was actually there's probably two things. The first thing I would tell them is they have to go do a safety course
Okay.
immediately. That the guy who taught me, he paid for me to go do one my first week. As I said, he was very safety conscious. Um,
So where did you go that for?
uh,
Like you were in
so
Brisbane at the time. Where did you go?
I think it was called Pinnacle Training.
Oh
So
yes, yes.
they did all sorts of they teach you how to use EWPs and all sorts of things. And I didn't do that, but it was mine was just simply a working safely from heights course.
Oh,
As
okay.
one day of your time. And they teach you how to work safely, why it's important, what the regulations are where we are, but even taking responsibility beyond that, because regulations doesn't just because something's regulation doesn't mean that's the safest method. You might
Yeah.
want to be even take it even further. So that would be my first. They need to go to a course. My second thing would be, in addition to the ladder, there are two things, particularly if you're going to work on your own, you must have. The first, there's a clamp you can get that clamps onto a gutter that allows you to tie your ladder off.
So what's that called?
Uh, I actually don't know the technical name, but I think it was a gutter clamp. I think that might have even been the name. But the guy who taught me, he had one. Um, And so literally it just latches on, latches and has a handle that allows you to tie it off.
So
Um,
you're thinking something like that?
no, that's actually another thing that's really worth having. I have seen them. That wasn't something I've ever used, but I have seen them, and that to be honest, I look at that would be even better in my opinion, because the downside of the clamp is it's only on one side.
Yeah,
That's not going to stop the wind from particularly grabbing your ladder or your weight shifting the ladder potentially.
yeah,
That what you're showing there would be even better. So something like that,
yeah.
or at the very least the clamp, the clamp I think was only about $40, so it's a bit cheaper. But either way. And the second thing is there's quite a number of these, and depending on who you talk to as to which one's better. And I don't have a particular preference with it, but there are thick rubber mats that are designed to be a footer
There
for your
is.
ladder that you can
Yeah,
get. And in my opinion, using both, or at least having both,
yeah,
because they're obviously, if you're doing a window that is not over a roof, you can't use the clamp, but you can definitely use the rubber mat. And I both of them, either one, they're not that expensive really, and even if they were, it's worth it to
well,
protect your
yeah,
health and your safety.
yeah, and particularly because we're talking about our lives, um, and there's a particular product that I use, if I can find it here on the Bunnings catalog, but it's sits into the gutter, and where the bracket is, it has a gap, and it sits over the so that's this one here. Let me just get that open. So it's called a
Yes.
Ladder's Little
Yeah.
Helper,
I've used
and,
them. They're very good.
and you can put your like your extension pole will slot straight in there. If you've got younger tip, it goes in, and then you can actually pop it up onto the gutter and then put your ladder on.
Yeah.
And it's
Um,
very easy to store. It has some good guides, and it's got that rough stuff there that the ladder won't slide on. So that's really
yeah.
quite important
It
to,
also it also protects the gutter as well. So from the aspect of caring for the client's home,
yeah,
that would be worth having as well.
yes.
Um,
So the two things have some clamp or some protective system up the top, and then mats at the bottom.
yeah, and look, it's is it annoying? Yes, because it adds time, but it's worth it because the moment you think it won't happen to you, well, so did every other person who it's ever happened to. They all thought that it wouldn't happen to them.
Yeah,
It's worth taking that little bit of extra time, spending that little bit of extra money for those items to make sure that you come home at the end of the day safely.
that's it. Absolutely, absolutely. Because you've got a wife and a little girl. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So I'm sorry you had the accident, Steve, and I think you were telling me earlier you've got a job, an office job now, but so you've got the income, but it's sad that that's what's caused you to leave the industry. So when you were window cleaning, how did I talk a lot to my guests about the need to set boundaries in business. Um, how did you do that in the time of 3 or 4 years that you were in business? How did you set boundaries for your business for yourself?
So one of the benefits to having learnt from another window cleaner who did multiple things, so he did house washing and pressure washing as well. Um, I learnt the value of knowing ahead of time what you are prepared to do and what you are not.
Yeah,
It is very important because you will get asked to do different things, and even in window cleaning itself, you will encounter different challenges that you may not want to do or may not be prepared to do. So, for example, builders cleans.
yeah,
I loathe them.
yeah,
And I
absolutely.
very early on determined I will never do them.
Yeah.
And so knowing that ahead of time, that's a boundary that I set and I refuse to break. But with that boundary, there's something else that is really good to do to make sure you're not that you're still serving the customer. And that is having someone that you can recommend who does do that work.
Yeah.
So, for example, with house washing, as I said, I didn't do that after when I went out on my own. I really did not particularly enjoy it and did not want to do it myself. But I still had a couple of house washers, a couple of businesses that I recommend, including the one that I worked for, and another window cleaner who also did house washing. In both cases, I actually checked their work, made sure I was comfortable with what they do because I did not want to put my name to something that
Yeah.
wasn't actually up to scratch.
Yeah.
But that happened with a lot of different things, with cleaning, with gutters,
Yeah.
all those sorts of things. You will get asked to do those things, and if you want to make it a part of your business, then great. It will actually help you a lot, particularly in the off season, in when the weather's not great. Having other services you can offer is good, but it's good to know ahead of time whether you want to do those things because you want to offer a professional service with everything you do. You also want to make sure you're covered from an insurance perspective
That's right.
with everything you do.
That's a good
Um,
point.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had a great subcontractor who did house washing, who cleaned gutters, and we would share jobs. I'd send s- s- commercial building washers to Jade. She'd send some windows to me, but she's now moved to Darwin, so that doesn't help at all. I'm on the
that's the
hunt. If
downside.
anyone's listening, I'm on the hunt for a good subcontractor here in Brisbane. But yeah, having
Well,
that.
I'll recommend a couple to you. I still know a couple over there who do very good work.
Okay, I'll
But
talk to you.
just
Yeah, a bit about that. So that's a really good point. Now, what about the crossover between business and personal life? How did you set boundaries with that?
uh, Yeah, so I had a rule pretty much from the word go. I would not work on weekends.
Yeah,
The only exception I made to that was at the end of the year. I didn't mind doing a couple because you're trying to fit customers in. Great time of year to really take whatever you can get, and that way you can have a bit of time in January. But that was a rule that I made pretty firm. That was probably the main one for me.
yeah, yeah,
I I'm a big believer in communication, and part of good communication is responding quickly.
yes,
And so I had no problem responding to, particularly when I was building the business, maybe not so much later, but in particular building the business. Um, if it was outside of office hours, I would still respond. There's nothing wrong with taking a call, setting an appointment. It doesn't take long to do that. We're
yeah,
talking about a few minutes. Um, I didn't mind doing that because I would rather be quick to communicate and get back to them rather than leave it and they think that they give them the impression that I'm not interested.
yeah,
So that was a boundary that I sort of, I guess, allowed myself to have, I
yeah,
suppose, whereas some don't do that, and that's their choice. But
yeah,
I think it's quite important to be very quick to respond. So I did that. But yeah, probably the main one for me was the weekends.
yeah,
I wanted that time for my family.
yes. So you're in Perth now, and you've had that experience of running a business, working for someone else. Here's a question I ask everybody: if somebody who was brand new in the industry said, "Hey, Steve, you've got those years of experience. Give me what are your top three tips that you would give to a newbie window cleaner?"
So first would be communication. That would be an essential one. Particularly these days, there's no excuse to be slow to get back to someone, whether it be via email, text, calling them back with technology these days. There's just no reason to. It's essential. The second thing I would recommend would be organization, specifically, obviously with everything, but specifically with accounts, tax, and records. Where a lot of people, not just window cleaners, but in any business where people go wrong is not being organized with those aspects. So from the word go, being organized in whatever way. And if it's something you can't be organized with, well, then outsource it
Yeah,
because you
yeah,
don't want to get behind. The third would be willing to learn and try new things,
yeah.
new
That's a good one.
techniques, both skills and equipment. I'd been window cleaning for 4 years, and thought I was pretty good. And when I moved here, I started subcontracting with a guy who he'd had about the same amount of experience with me, but there was a method with pull down that he taught me that I'd never needed to learn before. And I was incredibly good with the wave technique, even with the pole. I was very fast with it, but adding that to my repertoire, I had no problem. I was willing to learn. Even someone who's new to window cleaning, there might be something we can learn. So
Yeah,
never think you know it all. Be willing to learn and be willing to try new equipment, new techniques, everything. If you're willing to do that, you will always be able to improve and provide a better service for your customers over time.
yeah. They're good tips. They're good tips. So communication. What was the second one?
Organization,
Oh, being organized. That's right.
particularly
Keeping
with
all your
accounts and
records and accounts organized, and being willing to learn. That's powerful. Very, very powerful. Yeah. So that's been fascinating, Steve. Thank you for that. That chat about safety with ladders. A number of us probably steer clear from talking about that because, I know I've come off a ladder. I didn't fall off it. I just rode it down to the ground. It was a bit scary. That was early on. Ladder safety is so essential.
mm,
And thank you for those suggestions as a result of your unfortunate accident. So we hope that your recovery is quick and maybe you'll get back into it. So, Steve, thank you so much for the contribution. We really appreciate you being part of the Window Pro podcast and the insights that you've gained. And we all wish you the very, very best. Thanks very much.
thank you.